Hello, and thank you for listening to Texas History for Kids. I'm your host, Michelle Gallegos, an educator, writer, history nerd, and novice investigator. Each week on the show, we will learn about interesting parts of Texas history, from battles and historical figures to the odd and enchanted. Hi, and welcome back to Texas History for Kids. This is episode number 68, entitled Cynthia Ann Parker. Before listening to today's episode, be sure to grab the freebie listed on the show notes of today's podcast and follow along. Cynthia Ann Parker's story is one of the most famous and heartbreaking in all of Texas history. She lived a life caught between two very different cultures: the white American settlers, known as Anglos, and the Comanche Nation. Now, Cynthia was born during a time when the American settlers were traveling west to settle their homes. In the early 1800s, people just claimed land as their own and began building their homes and ranches around it. Unfortunately, there are people who had already been settled in the area, and these people weren't happy to see others encroaching on their lands. In this case, the Comanche natives felt like they were being driven away, so they fought tirelessly to keep their culture and their people alive. Imagine this life. You are 9 or 10 years old and your parents decide to move you away to a new land. Well, that's what happened to Cynthia Ann in 1836. She moved to Texas with her family, and they settled in an area in central Texas near the Navasota River. And they called their new home Fort Parker, named after her father, of course. Ever wondered how a town got its name? Well, usually this is exactly how it happened. You drew a little line in the dirt, maybe stuck a little flag in the ground, and you named your town. Most of the time, it was named after the person who discovered it. But home life wouldn't be bliss for very long. On May 19, 1836, a large group of Comanche warriors, along with their Kiowa and Kichai allies, attacked Fort Parker in central Texas. Several people were killed during the raid, and 5 people were taken captive. When you take somebody captive, that means you take them away from their homes and you make them a part of your society. Now, one of those people were 9-year-old Cynthia Ann Parker. It was a scary, life-changing moment, but Cynthia Ann's story didn't end there. The other 4 people captured at Fort Parker were eventually released. But as for Cynthia, instead of trying to escape, she simply began a new life with the Comanche people, one she would grow to love. Now, the second part of her story is her new life with the Comanche. She stayed with them for almost 25 years. She became a full member of the tribe, completely forgetting her early life and fully embracing her new one. She was given the name Nadua, which means someone found. She wore Comanche clothes, spoke their language, and followed their traditions. Cynthia Ann later married a respected Comanche warrior named Petanacona, and they had 2 sons, Quana and Pecos, and a daughter named Tapsana. Now, you may remember me talking about her famous son Quana in episode 38 of Texas History for Kids. If you haven't listened, it's a fascinating tale of bravery and leadership. Quana had worked to help the Comanche people survive after being forced onto these reservations. He even met with the United States president and helped to blend native traditions with new ways of life. So make sure you go back and take a listen to episode 38 to hear the entire story. Okay, In the 1840s, several people tried to bring Cynthia Ann back to her old life. Her brother, John Parker, asked her to return to their family, but she refused, saying she loved her husband and children way too much to leave. Later on, a trader named Victor Rose may have invited her to return too, but she still decided to stay with her Comanche family. A newspaper story from April 29, 1846 told about Colonel Leonard G. Williams, who saw Cynthia Ann trading with Comanches along the Canadian River. Even though he offered ransom money, the Comanche elders refused to let her go. To them, she was worth more than money. Later, the U.S. officials P.M. Butler and M.G. Lewis also saw her with the Yamparika Comanches on the Washita River. By then, she was fully a part of the tribe and already married. Then, around 1848, a couple of years later, a native agent named Robert S. Neighbors heard she was living among the Tenawak Comanches. He was told the only way she would be released was by force, because she was so deeply connected to her Comanche life and her family. Cynthia Ann never chose to return to Anglo society. To her, the Comanches were not her captors. They were her people. Sadly, on December 18, 1860, a group of Texas Rangers led by Lawrence Sullivan Ross attacked a Comanche hunting camp at Mule Creek, a branch of the Peace River. During the raid, they also captured 3 people. To their surprise, one was a blue-eyed woman who didn't speak English. She was holding an infant daughter. It turned out she wasn't Comanche at all. She was Cynthia Ann Parker, who was now in her 30s. Her uncle, Colonel Isaac Parker, identified her and brought her back to Anglo society. Cynthia Ann agreed to go with him, only if her sons could join her if they were ever found. At this point, she had believed that her husband, Petanacona, had been killed and feared she'd never see her sons again also. So they took her back. While traveling through Fort Worth, she was photographed holding her daughter and wearing her hair cut short, which is a sign in Comanche of mourning. She was sad. The Texas government felt sympathy for her and in April 1861 gave her $100 for 5 years and some land. Her uncles were made her legal guardians, but Cynthia Ann never adjusted to her old world. She tried several times to run away and return to the Comanches, but she never made it back. She lived with her brother and later her sister in East Texas, where she remained until her death, possibly in about 1870, though some say it was 1864. She was buried a number of times. First, she was buried in Fosterville Cemetery in Anderson County. Then, later in 1910, her son, Quanah Parker, moved her body to Post Oak Mission Cemetery in Oklahoma. And later, in 1957, both of them were reburied at Fort Sill Post Cemetery in Lawton, Oklahoma. So she was moved 3 times and reburied. Even though Cynthia Ann Parker never saw her Comanche family again, her story shows how complex life was on the Texas frontier. She was a pioneer who lived between 2 worlds, the Anglos and the Comanche, and her life was filled with love, loss, courage, and of course strength. Her son, Quanah Parker, grew up to be the most powerful Comanche leader, helping to preserve his native people, their culture, and their customs. He helped connect native and white settlers merge their worlds, and his leadership continued the legacy of the woman who raised him with pride and resilience. Thank you for listening to today's episode and joining me on this journey through Texas history. Of course, don't forget to subscribe and tune in next week where we'll uncover more Texas histories, mysteries, and legends. Please help me to keep the show going by supporting it. Click the Support the Show link in my show notes to contribute $3, $4, or $5 a month. That's less than the cost of your favorite snack, whatever it may be. Your support helps me continue researching, writing, and producing each episode. So every little bit helps, and thank you for being a part of this journey. Thank you for listening, and remember, today is